I have chosen to distance myself from people who espouse Christian values, yet have the audacity to support anyone in the fucking Republican Party. So as people's posts come on my thread, showing complete cognitive dissonance with the reality of the conservative party that they support, just block me and unfollow, because in light of recent events, we are not the fucking same. I usually don't open myself up like this to anyone except for immediate family members and close friends. However, in lieu of what has recently happened in the last couple days, I feel compelled to do so. When I served as the casualty officer in RC East Afghanistan, a few major incidents occurred that forever changed my life. One involved a RPG, rocket-propelled grenade attack on a vehicle carrying 2 young soldiers. Their bodies were initially reported as missing in action, MIA, because they couldn't be found. I was the face of death at that headquarters, First ID. Every time I walked into that tactical operations center, I could feel the dread in the air. On this particular day, I entered to see the drones searching for the kidnapped soldiers, believed to have been taken hostage. The panic and dread among the leaders in that room was palpable as they coordinated with the unit on the ground. I had to halt their proceedings and inform them that the soldiers were not MIA but killed in action. The disbelief in the room was tangible since the initial report indicated no bodies had been recovered. I had to forcefully stop this seasoned, combat-tested officer who outranked me from actively looking for these soldiers. Look him in the eyes and tell him, "Sir, there are no bodies because they were incinerated." The other officers in the vicinity heard me and could feel their eyes boring into me as I delivered the bad news. It was a moment that has stood still in my mind for many years. Another incident I remember clearly was rushing to the hospital to meet with a sergeant first class, likely from the infantry, who had been shot in the leg. He wanted to be patched up quickly so he could return to lead his soldiers. His lieutenant had just been shot in the head, but due to his injury, he was being sent to Landstuhl and then back Konus. What could I possibly say to this seasoned warrior who had just lost a young lieutenant, someone he more than likely helped train? So, with this pending dread and heartache, which happened more often than not, I looked him in the eyes and asked, "Do you think you've trained your soldiers well enough to handle the mission?" And he slowly nodded at me, his gaze locked on my eyes with all the emotions semi-masked behind that stare. And I continued, "Then all you can do is trust that you prepared them. Let the other leaders you've trained step up and take care of yourself, because right now you won't be an asset to them." He stared at me for what seemed like a millennia. I have no idea what was going through his mind, what he saw when he looked into my eyes as I braced for an emotional reaction, which I would have accepted in silence. Who am I to judge what he's been through? Who am I to feel offended? The look on that soldier's face broke my fucking heart, and I carry it with me to this day. The last incident I'll mention happened at the same hospital, was to a young child no more than 10 years old who picked up an unexploded Russian ordnance that detonated. The child suffered burns over 70% of his body. He was brought to our hospital because no other facilities in the area were equipped to help him. His father sat by his side day after day. I remember the cap he wore framing a face etched with pain and fatigue as he sat by his young, innocent child. More often than not, his head cradled in his hands. I reached out to my friends back home for crayons, notebooks, and drawings paper for the injured child or innocent victims. Innocent victims, they had no part in basically creating, I can't even get it out, the war. Only one person sent a package. Not one Christian offered help. I witnessed many things in that role that often make the overt and blatant racism and sexism I experience seem insignificant by comparison. But I will say this. When I see the man that you support desecrate Section 60 of Arlington National Cemetery, violating policies that prohibit using the sacred ground for political activities, when I see photos from his campaign with attendees stepping on the graves of these soldiers, when I see individuals you support sending thumbs up and other gestures to their supporters while smiling and fucking laughing beside the grave of a soldier who died on March 8th, 2020 during his presidency, when I see these images used in a campaign video to exploit the deaths of 13 soldiers killed under President Biden to garner support from great Americans like yourself, I will say this. We are not the fucking same. I firmly plant my boots on moral and ethical ground and state, with no malice in my heart, that you and I do not share the same principles and values. We do not love our country in the same way. So with sadness, indignation, and absolute fucking rage, the dichotomy of emotions stemming from what seems like black and white to me, but remains obscure to others, I accept this. I accept that some people espouse virtues they do not truly understand, as evidenced by their actions, words, and those they support. And this applies to you, supporters of the Republican Party, in all shapes and forms. So farewell, my friends, and I hope your God blesses you with the same passion, virtues, and values that spur on the Republican Party, that clings like sludge to the people you support. Sometimes talking is futile, and some people must go through life to see the truth before their eyes, the real monsters they fear, the devil in sheep's clothing. As for me, I choose to disassociate myself from those who live in absolute cognitive dissonance about the world around them. We are not the fucking same. I bid you farewell.